Hi, everyone. You know what connects everyone who's ever stood behind a counter? That smile at 9 a.m. when you're still half asleep? The customer who asks, "Do you have something cheaper, but that looks expensive?" And those rare but really awesome moments when someone leaves happy and actually waves at you through the window. Today we've collected the most alive, funny, touching, and completely real stories straight from retail workers. Buckle up. This is going to be very human. I stayed with my parents who were practically very rich. However, I preferred being busy. My pay was not so much, but I got the job to avoid idleness after school. I worked there for 2 years. It was a good experience. I met average people who were really down to earth and did not wrap every conversation around wealth and affluent lifestyles. A lot of people that I knew believed that living ostentatiously was the only way to prove their worth and make it known that they had money. This was something I never supported, especially as a person that was equally from a wealthy home. My parents let me know the importance and value of wealth. This was a major guide for me growing up. I did not see money as a tool of oppression on the less privileged. Rather, I wanted to know what it was like to be average. Growing up in expensive schools around extravagant people constrained my worldview to the elite class, so to put myself in the shoes of the average man, I took a job as a sales personnel. I initially wanted to take a job on Alibaba and work remotely, but for the full experience I sold China electric scooters at a supermarket. It was a full mixture of peace and reality. I felt like my colleagues at work were more real than every other friend I had ever had. They spoke practically, and they talked about resource management and wealth building. None of them wanted to end as salesmen, and they had actual plans to build wealth. It was amazing to be busy, relate with people who were humble and actually had a wider world view while still being able to earn my own money. I believe the rich shouldn't oppress the poor. They should rather help them. A good number of them are where they are because of lack of opportunities. I worked for 2 different grocery stores on and off for 10 years. In first place is Jimmy. He was on meth. Literally on meth. I'm not just guessing, because I used to do a lot of meth and I called him out on it when he'd come in high. The strange thing was, Jimmy was mega aggro. Like he'd pick fights with me in the store, scream at me, "Let's go, I'll fuck you up," etc. But he was always with several very effeminate other men when he came in. Like really artsy, sweater around the neck foppish dudes. They were the bankroll for sure. We used to make Jimmy wait outside and his boyfriends would finish the shopping. Then sometimes Jimmy would get clean and come apologize, and then do it all over again, you know? Addict behavior. In second place was a stranger who walked in the front door and in a panic screamed, "Where's the head?" I was like 18 years old at the time, and it took me a moment to realize he meant the bathroom. He waddled/ran down aisle 9, but didn't make it. There was a trail of poop all the way to our head. Third place is really a repeating group of customers. Police routinely came into one of his stores I worked at and would show us pictures of customers, and they'd tell us, "These guys, don't mess with these guys. They have priors for knifing clerks and strangers." The cops would always have really serious faces/tones when telling us, as if to seriously implore us, "These are fucking bad dudes." The guys they were so worried about would come in, sure enough, and they'd take whatever they wanted. Sometimes they'd stop at the door on their way out and yell at us shit like, "What, bitch? What are you gonna do?" Now on this last one, several of my co-workers theorized that the guys were in cahoots with the cops, which is relatively possible, I'll grant. But I always told those co-workers, "You want to test that theory? We make $11 an hour." Sorry for the long post. I've got too many useless grocery stories. Unless you've been in the union long time, don't work in a grocery store. Two ladies were doing a bold shoplifting spree. City police were at every store exit, waiting for them to leave the premises. Store security was tracking them through the store. We were told to leave them totally alone if they came into our area. Sure enough, here they came into my area. One woman was pushing a stroller with a little boy in it, approximately 2 years old. The other one was pushing of those old-fashioned baby carriages, like from the 1920s, with a blanket thrown over it. I heard later that someone had asked her about her baby, and she said it had breathing problems and needed privacy, thus the blanket over the entire carriage. They shopped all 3 floors of our store, filling up the carriage, any room in the stroller, and filling girdles under their clothes, getting physically larger the more time they spent in the store. They finally attempted to return to their car with $5,000 plus worth of merchandise and were stopped by police. Rumor has it, they even had 16 pairs of earrings stuffed into their underpants. The baby that has breathing problems was revealed to be a plastic baby doll. I started working when my store was very understaffed. So understaffed that the managers were doing cashier work. I had to use the restroom once in the middle of my shift, and apparently while I was in there, some Karen got in a snit with the manager at the register. So I come out of the restroom to catch the tail end of the argument. Important to note here is that managers and cashiers wore different colored shirts, and it was just me and a bunch of managers that day. So I come out from the back in shirt that is colored different from everyone else at the counter, and the lady locks onto me. She starts lecturing me, a cashier, about keeping my employees in line, making sure they respect customers, all that jazz. She's telling me to discipline my managers, in particular my boss, who she was arguing with. Finally, she runs out of air and leaves in a huff. I look at my boss. He looks at me. She thought I was the manager. We both bust out laughing, and the lady comes back inside, screaming about us thinking she was a joke. We de-escalate. I apologized, and she leaves, but I never forgot about that. I work at Subway, so the fast food equivalent. Important context. My store operates on a military base, meaning we do 3 to 6 times more business than an average Subway does on any given day. Our lunch rush might be 150 units for the peak hour, whereas a normal store might make 35 to 60 depending on the store. A few months ago, we had a guy come in just before the start of lunch rush and begin his order while it was still slow. After completing it, he began to order another sandwich, then another, then another. The line was beginning to form. He reached sandwich number 13, meaning that by this point the entire store is full of people waiting, 50 plus in a theme park-style queue, and all 13 sandwiches lined up on the cutting boards. His 14th was his last. When he finished that, he got over to the veggie side and had no clue what he wanted on any of them. Each one was for a different person. It's worth mentioning that this was what I will delicately refer to a somewhat challenged individual. In this situation, that meant constantly trailing off and getting distracted throughout the entire ordering process, significantly extending things. After multiple texting and phone call sessions and some serious study of his disorganized order write-down sheet, he manages to complete the vegetables. The line is out the door by this point. He comes to the end of the line where we are about halfway done bagging his sandwiches, only to start angrily telling us that he was each individual name written on the stickers of the sandwiches. Our 1 to 14 numbers just weren't enough. I can't remember any of the specific names, but every single name was an extremely weird out-of-pocket nickname, like something that could never possibly be in a birth certificate. I think one may have been Smiley. Once that is finally done, he approaches the register. I shit you not, this is the can't make this up part. This motherfucker pulls out a rubber-banded stack of credit cards as thick as a deck of playing cards and informs us that he intends to pay for each and every sandwich individually, one to each card. No, they were not in the order he placed them. Ultimately, this douche clown cost us quite a lot of business in the form of walkouts and took about 30 minutes to move through the system. Our lunch rush was a horrific nightmare because of how backed up we were without ever having had a fair chance to get off the ground. I implore you, do not do this. Every aspect of this could and should have been done better. He should have had everything written in order. He should have informed us of the quantity of his order to begin with. He should have had the vegetables written out properly. He should have numbered the sandwiches on his paper so we didn't need names. He should have paid with one card and had everyone PayPal him. It's not fair to put all of that on us and completely train wreck the next 4 hours of 7 people's shifts because you're too lazy to plan. End of rant. Was working in a major hi-fi retailer in TV/stereo sales. I had an older customer come in with her daughter and buy a cheap TV/DVD player combo. She haggled as hard as she could, and just to get rid of her, I gave her a really sweet deal, probably made about $3 commission off the item. She then proceeded to harass myself and other staff members for months, claiming that the DVD player inbuilt into the TV was scratching her DVDs. She demanded we replace all her DVDs and give her a brand new TV. She bought a few DVDs in as proof, and it was clear as day she had scratched them herself. Really brutal scratches. After much deliberation, we replaced the TV, but only with one condition. I would have to go to her house and install it for her. It was like something out of a horror movie. She had the worst house on a nice street. It was filled with rubbish and stuffed animals. I felt like, this is it. She's gonna murder me. I got it installed so fast that I'm pretty sure I didn't do it correctly. A month later, I got transferred stores, and thankfully a mate of mine took my place, so when she came back in looking for me, he told her I'd quit and didn't work for the company anymore. She then demanded my phone number. That was 12 years ago, and I still get the ick thinking about it. Worked in a middle-class British supermarket chain about 10 years ago. Saturday morning shift, not overly busy, but plenty of footfall. Our chilled dairy section was more or less opposite the tills when I started hearing raised voices from the chilled section. Turns out an elderly lady, roughly 70 years old or so, had collapsed face first into the cheese chiller. lying there face down in a mix of butters and non-dairy spreads. Fairly serious stuff. CPR being given by bystanders and staff. I didn't get involved directly, only 17 or 18 at the time, only keeping other customers from rubbernecking and giving the old dear some dignity. When I hear a large, disapproving huff from this is when a middle-aged woman stood behind me. Think, middle-class Karen, hair up in bun, designer leather jacket, designer bag, designer boots, face butchered by so much filler and Botox it was giving Michael Jackson a run for his cash, with that quintessential entitled British degrading tone, in my nicest customer service voice. Explain that there is an ongoing medical emergency and this aisle is closed. She huffs again, getting impatient, replies in the most condescending tone of, "Well, I don't have all day to wait. Go and get me these things," as if I was her servant. I again politely inform her I couldn't, as the products she wanted were directly where this elderly lady was. She huffs and snarks and proceeds, without any hesitation, to push me out the way with her trolley, push her way past another member of staff, parks her trolley next to the woman being given CPR, reaches over her and the staff giving her CPR, and grabs 2 blocks of cheese, puts them in her trolley and trots off like nothing was happening, oblivious to what was happening. I was in speechless disbelief on how cold people could be. Retail, never again. When I was a cashier, there was an older lady who regularly shopped at our store and demanded a military discount every single time, despite not having any proof of being a veteran, as was required. She would always try to find a new employee to try to trick them. She never got the discount from me, or anyone if I was around to say so. There is no telling who got in trouble due to her antics. Years later, I'm no longer working there, just shopping, and guess who is at a register arguing with an older cashier who looks absolutely confused and anxious. Scammin' Sue spots me and yells out, "Hey, you work here. Tell them about my discount." I guess she recognized me but forgot who I was. I took this opportunity to say what I wanted without fear of getting in trouble. I tell her to leave the poor cashiers alone, and something along the lines of, if she really fought for this country the way she fights for this discount, she'd be able to show some proof of that by now. The look on her face was priceless. The workers were so confused because they didn't know me or how I knew what she was doing. It felt so satisfying, though. I've been in retail for a very long time. The stories that always get me are ones that involve theft. We had a crew stealing trucks, driving them in through the front doors, wrapping a chain around the ATM, and rip it out of the ground. The first one they did this at the ATM was actually out of service and was empty. One night they broke into a store when the police were less than a minute away when they got the call. There was a running shootout with the thieves. Another one was a guy that would climb up the side of the building, cut a 24-inch by 24-inch hole in the roof, smash through the ceiling tile with a rock so he could see where to land, then rappel commando style down into the store. We had a young guy smashing into the front glass with large landscaping rocks from around the area. Enough times that we had to have 3-meter security film installed that holds the glass together when you smash it. One night he comes back and finally finds one window by our snack bar and gets in. Cut up his leg pretty bad on the broken glass. He was caught in the parking lot of the area waiting for a cab. He was breaking in and smashing and grabbing electronics, selling it online and living off of that until he needed to do another smash and grab run. One morning, someone asked if I was working on plumbing outside the receiving dock. I go out there and find some copper pipe and fittings, recognizing they are condensate drain lines from the rooftop air conditioners. I get up on the roof and find piles of cut-up copper pipe and bags of rope. We called the police. 4 days later, I get a call at 4 a.m. asking me if anyone is supposed to working up on the roof. I tell them to call the cops immediately. Cops get there and shine their flashlights up to the roof and see these two sets of raccoon eyes peering over the side. They were about to get the fire truck ladder to get on the roof, and I said, "Let's just take the stairs instead." Lots of other stories, but my hand is cramping typing on this phone. I used to work at a thrift store for 5 years. We'll call it slavers 'cause working there was hell. When I used to work in the front as a cashier, something always happened. One time while managing our fitting rooms, a woman approached me with a worried look on her face. I asked how I could help her, and she told me that someone had left something disturbing in a book, a woman's Bible, might I add, and she had to show me. I looked at her, concerned as well, because after already working there for a while, I thought of the worst things like shit smeared in the pages, stuff like that. She hands me the book and I open it, but she tells me what page to turn to, and I do. In the first page of this book was a developed photo of a naked guy lying, posing mostly, in bed with his big-ass dick out. I slammed the book close so fast in case someone was nearby, and I took it to my superior and asked her to open it. Her and some of my other female coworkers were gawking at this photo, but they ended up tossing it out at the end of the night. Another time, while working on the register, the sounds of a woman shouting came from our housewares section. One coworker left, and then came back, and more followed, as well as one of my supervisors. I had to stay at the register since I was main cashier, who had to stay in the front in case we had customers. There were still some shouts, and then one of my coworkers came to me and I had asked what happened. They told me to page our other supervisor to the front immediately because a woman was attacking another woman in the housewares area. We'll call the supervisor Andrew. I page Andrew with some urgency in my voice, but he doesn't come. I realize he's still on his break or lunch, and I tell my coworker to stay at the register while I run and get Andrew. That was probably the quickest I've ever been in that store, and I find Andrew sitting in the break room. He looked at me confused, and I tell him that 2 women were fighting, and we both run to the section. A small crowd had formed around them, and I see some of my coworkers trying to pull one of them off the other. Andrew dismissed me to my register, as I figured he would handle this, since he was bigger and stronger. Turns out a woman was shopping with her daughter. The daughter had some kind of mental issues, and I guess didn't take her medication that day or something, and ended up attacking a random woman in the store that day. One of my coworkers even told me the girl was biting into the woman's scalp because she said chunks of hair in her teeth. The cops were called, obviously, and the day went on, but that was a few stories I can remember.